you doing, Met fans? And welcome back to another edition of the Terry Collins Show, presented by Tunnel to Tower, supporting America's greatest heroes. Donate just $11 per month by going to T2T.org. That's T2T.org. I'm Jonah. We have a big show for you today, highlighted by a special Talking with TC. And here to tell us all about it is the former manager of the New York Mets, the most tenured manager in their history. Direct from Florida, Mr. Terry Collins. TC, welcome back.
Thanks, John. It's good to be back. I've had a busy month so far, and it's great to be back and talk some baseball. And I'm looking forward to certainly having Bobby Valentine on the Talking with TC today. He's one of my favorite people, and Bobby and I do a lot together. People have accused us of being brothers. They see every time I show up someplace, he seems to be there. So that'll be a fun show. But I'm looking forward to getting this kicked off here today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Terry. I can't wait for it as well. It will be a great one today. And later, we'll also debut a new Tunnel to Tower story. This one is narrated by you, Terry, and features the ceremony at Citi Field on Memorial Day when T2T's Frank Siller made a special presentation to a wounded service member, Army Sergeant Major Daniel Hendricks. But as always, we kick it off with the leadoff. The Mets are back at Citi Field this week, taking on the NL East leaders, the Philadelphia Phillies, and then finishing up the month of August against the Miami Marlins in a 4-game set. 5 weeks remain left in the regular season, and each series becomes more important than the last one at this point. Here to discuss it all with us is the Mets beat writer for Newsday and analyst for SNY's Baseball Night in New York, Laura Albanese. Laura, welcome back to the Terry Collins Show.
Good to see y'all.
It's good to see you. How was Atlanta?
Thanks for coming on again.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I am shocked. This is the first time I've covered a series in Atlanta where I did not have some sort of rain mishap. So I don't know if my luck is about to run out because this was incredible.
Well, you got some really good weather in New York this week, that's for sure. So, the Mets are home. The Mets went 3-3 on this road trip, losing 2 or 3 against the last place Nationals. They won 2 or 3 from Atlanta. The club is 7 games back now in back of Philadelphia, NL East, and only a game and a half ahead of the Reds in this final wild card spot. Only 32 games remain. Are we at the point, and this is obviously for both of you to have a discussion, are we at the point where the NL title is out of reach at this point with 7 games behind Philadelphia, and the only chance the team has is to be this wild card spot, the third place a wild card spot? So I'd like to get both of your assessments on that.
I mean, I think the perspective, the player perspective and the reporter perspective are 2 very different things. I think if you're an athlete, you want to go for that NL East spot because, I mean, why would you try to just go for the wild card? But frankly, what is it? We have 30-something more games left. I think trying to secure that wild card spot is the most realistic option for them. Specifically, you look at this last road trip against the Nationals and the Braves, and sure, there were a lot of bright spots. Nolan McLean looks like the real deal. He genuinely was impressive. I have concerns about the bullpen. We're talking about guys. I had written an article about Ryan Stanek and Ryan Helsley, and it's like, wow, they throw 100 miles per hour, but they've been throwing it right down the middle, and major league hitters don't miss that these days. So I have concerns about that. The offense is heating up, but this is a pretty difficult stretch right now. 3 games against the Phillies, then you do Marlins, and then that's going to be that really pivotal series. They have first Detroit, and then they have Cincinnati. So, I mean, you do whatever you can. I have that Cincinnati series absolutely circled in my calendar.
Well, Laura, I will tell you, I understand exactly why you said, hey, look, but you know what? You go out every night, and you got to take care of business. At this time of the season, when you got 32 games left, you can't worry about yesterday. You can't worry about tomorrow. You got to play tonight's game and figure out how to win tonight's game. And, yeah, there's some issues. I mean, the offense is heating up, but are they heating up because they didn't see real good pitching? Because they're going to see some better pitching against the Phillies. So what you have to do for me, it always comes down to playing the game fundamentally sound. Catch the baseball when you're supposed to, throw to the right bases, back up the bases, make pitches, work the sides of the plate, just like you said. 100 miles an hour in today's game down the middle, that doesn't bother major league hitters. So you got to start making pitches. So, but I tell you what, for me, it's always about that big medal that's there to win the division, because that's what you play for. And when that's out of reach, okay, next worry about the next thing involved. Because if you keep winning games, who knows what's going to happen at the end? And we've seen a lot of 6 and 7 games leads towards the end of the season get wiped out because the Mets get hot and the Phillies get cold. The Phillies, they just lost to one of the best pitchers in the game. So you don't know where they are emotionally. So I think you just got to say, hey, look, let's go win this thing, because when you walk through those doors, it's about winning anyway.
Yeah, I really like that mentality because, sometimes I think about, and not to call it the quote unquote losers mentality, but the mentality that, okay, I'm good enough for second place. And you don't want to think that way, even unless you're actually mathematically eliminated. You want to think like you can reach the absolute pinnacle, because second place when you hit the playoffs doesn't mean absolutely anything. So of course, yeah, you go in every single day as if this one game could be the key to turning everything around, or be the key to kind of creating the sustained win streak. I don't know what you saw, and I guess I'd want to see your perspective on this, because in a lot of ways, the Mets really haven't been defensively sound in a way that we necessarily expected earlier in the season. We saw a little bit of that turnaround in the first 2 games against Atlanta, but then we saw a lot of regression in the third game. Just personally, what are you seeing from their defense in terms of just literally catching the ball?
Well, Laura, I got to tell you, I've had arguments with a lot of people in my past, but I was always taught pitching and defense win championships, and so I agree. I mean, I was watching the game. I think it might even have been yesterday's game. I'm watching the game, and then the announcers came on. And they said, well, Taylor should be in center field and Mullen should be in left field, but he doesn't want to play left field. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. If this is the best way to go, put the people where they're going to be the best. And I've truly believed that. That's why I've always thought those utility players, Ben Zobrist and even Jeff McNeil, they do such a good job where they are. But at this particular time of the year, they better be in the best spot you can put them to make your team the best it can be. So and you got to make solid plays. You just it's about the great plays. Sometimes the super plays, they just happen. But it's that everyday routine play that you're throwing to the right base, you're getting a lead runner, you're hitting the cutoff man to keep the batter runner from advancing. Little things that help you win baseball games, and that's what I got to see right now, because with 32 games to go, those are the mistakes that are going to keep you out of the win that division.
Yeah, I was thinking about that yesterday when I saw that the ball that Jerickson Profar hit. I'm like, well, does Tyrone Taylor make that catch? Because Tyrone Taylor is a defensively superior center fielder. And I'm like, and even if he doesn't make that catch, I think 1 run scores and not 2. And suddenly it's a different ballgame, because then the Mets score a run later on in the game. So, I mean, these are the types of things where, sure, hindsight is 20/20, but they're going to matter. They're going to matter a lot down the stretch, because, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but at this point, every game absolutely does count.
I totally agree with that. I really do. I think that's what the announcer said. Well, and again, in those situations, is the base hit going to beat you? And if that base hit's going to beat you, then you can't worry about the double. You can't worry about the ball over your head. You got to, it's always about, here's an analytical stat. You always take, what's the most common ball? It's going to be a single, right? There's a heck of a lot more singles hit in every game than there is doubles. So, was he too deep? I don't know. I didn't get a really good perspective of where they lined up. And again, maybe their defensive analytics and defensive charts said, nope, we got him in the perfect places. Well, then, you know what? Then the Atlanta Braves got lucky and hit the ball where nobody was standing. So, but I agree with exactly what you said. This is the time you got to step up and make plays.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to get to the pitching part. Nolan McLean has had 2 starts now, both of which came after losses, and he kind of became a stopper, which was so great to see with commanding performances. And now the speculation on the 2 other pitchers that are top in the organization's prospect list, Jonah Tong. There's been some speculation and rumors about him over the last few days, and Brandon Sproat. And there could be a change with Brandon as well. So, Laura, based on what you heard about their promotions, of anything, this week, and then TC, should the Mets bring up these young prospects to help at this late stage of the season on the pitching side? So, Laura first.
I mean, with Brandon Sproat, I think Carlos Mendoza indicated pretty clearly that they're preparing him for some sort of role with the Major League Ball Club. they worked him out of the bullpen. It did not go particularly well. That's only the second time in his minor league career that he pitched out of the bullpen, and it was one of the worst outings of his career. I don't know how much of that is because he worked out of the bullpen. I don't know how much of it is nerves at the idea that this is your audition to make it to Major League Baseball. So it'll be interesting to see how they use Sproat. I think it might be a little bit risky using him out of the bullpen. I know that they were higher on Nolan McLean's stuff, and that certainly has not disappointed. Jonah Tong is fascinating to me because, clearly this kid knows how to pitch, but, how far can you get when you have these two dominant pitches and then your secondary stuff is still sort of in development and you've kind of just fast-tracked all the way through the minor league. So how will this play? That being said, we're getting to a place, they're in the middle of a 16 straight, and they're in the stretch run, and your arms you got to be rested for the postseason. Sometimes you just need bodies too. So, I know that the chatter around calling up Jonah Tong is louder than it certainly was before. I don't think it was much of a thought earlier in the season, but he's impressed them that much.
Well, Laura, you hit it. I read the story today what Carlos was talking about Sproat. And, years ago when I was the farm director, and again, I was very lucky. I'd already been as a major league manager before I became the farm director. So the one thing I learned is, a lot of guys, when they're minor league starters and they get called to the big leagues, they don't start because you've got a rotation. So you're putting the bullpen, and now you're asking guys with no experience coming out of the bullpen when you're a young guy to learn how to pitch. So when I was the farm director, we took the likes of Chad Billingsley, Jonathan Broxton, Han-Chi Kuo, and we made them be relievers. We made them spend 2 weeks during the summertime where you got to learn how to pitch out, get yourself ready in the bullpen to come into a game because you don't know what your role is going to be. So I understand that. Okay, it may be, hey, look, maybe this guy has to throw. Sproat's always been a starter. He's used to throwing 45 pitches to warm up. You don't have that luxury as a bullpen guy. Sometimes you got to get up and get ready as fast as you can. So I take it as a learning, as a development tool. I also believe that I don't know Tong. He could walk through my door right now, wouldn't know who he is. So I've never seen him throw one pitch ever. But that's why you have scouts. That's why you have scouts who better know your big league club. These scouts, these professional scouts, they should know. They should have scouted the New York Mets to know exactly what the Mets have. So when they go down and watch a AAA pitcher or a AA pitcher, they can say, hey, look, he's as good or maybe better than what you have. And those are the guys you rely on. It's one thing about managing in the minor leagues, and I've managed down there a long, long time. You can only judge a player on what you see. You don't see big league baseball games. You see AA games if you're the AA manager. You see AAA games if you're the AAA manager. So all you can do is rate your pitcher on who they're facing at those particular levels. That's why those major league scouts, when they come in to see, they've got to have an idea of what's got to get done to be able to have success at the major league level. They saw McLean pitch in the minor leagues. They can spin the ball, spin the ball, spin the ball. Everybody's talking about spinning the ball. Well, that's what works in the big leagues today. So they took this one guy that can spin the ball better than anybody else, and he's had success. So I think it's going to come down to, like you say, they're going to need numbers. What, they can call up one guy now in September? Is it one guy?
One pitcher and one position player.
Yeah, and one position player. I just thinking, when you're talking about a September call up, you got to bring the right guy. And if they think, hey, the bullpens, we got to see who can pitch best out of the bullpen, then it's good for Sproat to get a little work down there.
So I think I have a kind of a follow-up question because I don't know, as reporters and people who have not played the game professionally, obviously, you look at the psychological factor. I look at Nolan McLean, the fact that he was able to come in and make his major league debut and kind of play stopper and then go back to essentially what's his hometown. He played travel ball a couple blocks away from Turner Field and be surrounded by Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine and John Smoltz and still put on a performance like this. And the mental makeup of a kid coming and after 2 major league starts in highly stressful environments and being able to execute, I thought was really impressive. When you're talking about talented pitchers like a Tong, like a Sproat, how much of that is a factor as to whether or not they're going to have success at the major league level?
Laura, you hit it right on the head. That is the factor. That is the factor. How can they get through these? Let me tell you, I have seen a lot of guys, of course, today's game, these guys probably would be big leaguers, but years ago when you was commanding of pitches, and I've seen guys who were afraid to fail. And so they had good arms. Sometimes they wanted to back off so they could throw a strike, and they got knocked around, even though they had good arms. In today's game, these guys, as we're watching right now, with successful, pitchers throwing 100 down the middle of the plate. If they get to the size of the plate, those pitches are a little bit better. So I think what you just said is exactly what's got to be the key, and that is, are they mentally tough enough to be put in a stressful situation, and be able to deal with it? McLean might be one of those special guys. I go back a few years ago, and you guys remember when the Tampa Bay Rays brought up David Price. It took him to the World Series. This guy went from AAA, came up, started. They put him in the bullpen in the playoffs, and the guy took him to the stinking World Series. So there are special people, and maybe he's one of them. But I'm sure when it comes to one of these other guys, there's going to be a lot of input from the AAA staff, the pitching coaches, the minor league pitching coach to make those decisions. But, Laura, you hit it right on the head. It is all about what's up here.
That makes sense.
I'll continue with pitching. This will be the final topic for this week's leadoff, and TC, I'll ask you something, and then Laura, I'd like you to follow up with Terry after his answer. David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza have now decided to have their rotation pitch on regular rest instead of the extra day rest, and bypassing what you would call a six-man rotation for the rest of the season. With Clay Holmes laboring a little bit, seems every time he hits the fourth inning. Sean Manaea still seems to be almost like still ramping up because he missed most of the season, and there's still that concern about what he's got, loose bodies in his elbow. So you have that part of it. Kodai Senga has never pitched on regular rest during his Mets tenure, and David Peterson has been kind of the workhorse. But, at this point of the season, people get tired as well. And then Nolan McLean comes in, successful but short sample size. So, TC, your opinion on this decision on going to regular rest instead of extra days rest, and bypassing that six-man rotation to a five-man rotation this part of the year. And Terry, to reminisce back in your day, how difficult was it to manage a pitching staff in September?
Well, to start out with the first part of the question, I'm an old school guy, John. I believe, you know what, you get five starters and they're the best guys you got. You got this time of year, you got to run them out there. And you know what you do? You cut them back in the middle in between starts. You know what? Hey, look, don't worry about a 35 or 40 pitch bullpen in the middle after you had 2 days off. Cut them back to 25. They're coming back early anyway. So I've had pitchers in the past. Matter of fact, in 2015, we tried to go to a six-man rotation because we were worried about innings limits at the end, and we got into September, and I'll take it anyway. I mean, I had Matt Harvey was the first guy to walk in and said, "Give me the baseball. Give me the baseball. I want to win." And those guys, they can do it. All you got to do is work with them. Make sure you back them down. If they have an outing where they maybe go 90 pitches, maybe the next outing, cut them back to 75. But you can do it. You got to be able to manage it, but you can do it. And in September, it's all about managing your pitching. When you're in a pennant race, it's all about managing that pitching and that bullpen. You're going to use a guy now, and I know Diaz is the closer and you save him. But once in a while, he may have to pitch in the tie game. He may have to get you to the next inning. And he's shown in the past, he can go 2 innings if he needs to. He might have to have a day off the next day, but he can do it. And this is the time of year when, they're all in good shape. Everybody's getting a little fatigued. So what you try to do is you try to rest them as best as you can. Cut back their running if they run before a game. Cut back their running. Cut back how many balls they count now all your bullpen pitches you throw. Well, before the game at 3:00 they all play catch on that first baseline. Cut those back because it's about bullets in the game that count right now.
Yeah, no, it's big boy time, and frankly, what are you going to save your bullets for if you don't make the playoffs? So I mean,
absolutely right.
So
exactly right.
And you're looking at guys, Sean Manaea pitched, not even half a season. Kodai Senga has missed some time. So they're going to be slightly more rested, even though they're still in that ramp-up kind of phase, especially Manaea, it feels like, because he does hit that wall around the 5th inning, where he might be able to give you more. Because I just remember last year, Manaea was great, but you could tell he hit a wall towards the end of the season.
Right.
So not having that, as a concern. David Peterson, obviously taking care of his body. Clay Holmes, for having exceeded his innings limit almost twice over, the man is built for durability. If you see the way that he is actually constructed, and I think that's one of the reasons why they were so okay with making that transition from reliever to starter. So I think the 5-man rotation, sure, you want your best guys out there. Tyler McGill is coming back. There's a lot that you can do with that. I don't necessarily know that you even have to put Tyler McGill in the rotation, because he is often profiled almost better in relief. So that could be an interesting option as well. They can also piggyback. We saw some success with having, kind of some like a Clay Holmes piggyback with a Sean Manaea and that sort of thing. So there is creativity involved, it seems like, especially when it comes to September. But frankly, it's what makes it fun. It's what makes it interesting. Find one way to win, and whatever that is, use it.
Laura, I agree with you. And that, your idea about a piggyback, that's, teams, a lot of teams did that for a long time. And that's great if you can get that guy, get him warmed up, but bring him in on a clean inning. Let him, just like he's starting a game. It's worked in the past. There's no reason why it can't work now.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate, as always, Laura, your insights here on the Terry Collins Show. Thank you so much for being back on with us. And please let everybody know where they can find you, not only in print, but on TV and in the podcast world.
Yeah, I do too many things. So you can find me at newsday.com/Mets. You can find all my Mets coverage there. You can find me on on X at Albanese Laura. My podcast is a sports and pop culture podcast called First Time Listener, Long Time Caller. And I'm an analyst once in a while on SNY's Baseball Night in New York.
Keeping very busy. All right, Laura, thank you so much for your time. We'll talk to you real soon.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks for coming on. We'll talk soon. Good luck.
Bye.
Be safe.
All right, Terry, this week we get to debut the new Tunnel to Towers story that you had a part in the production of it this year. On Memorial Day, T2T founder Frank Siller made a very special presentation to one of our heroes, Army Sergeant Major Daniel Hendricks at Citi Field. And TC, I know you haven't seen this yet, so let's make that debut right here.
On Memorial Day, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation honored the heroes who have selflessly served our nation. Among those was Army Sergeant Major Daniel Hendricks. During a special pregame ceremony at Citi Field, Hendricks was surprised by a special announcement by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
Daniel is receiving the keys to his very own mortgage-free smart home.
For Sergeant Major Hendricks, the gift of an accessible home is truly life-changing, a powerful reminder of how we can honor those who have given so much for our freedom.
Mets fans, let's hear it one more time for Daniel Hendricks.
Go T2T.org for more information. Let's go, Mets, and let's help Tunnel to Towers.
Great story with Terry Collins as voiceover for that. And Terry, of course, is so happy to be involved with T2T, as we all are. And let's give you an update on what's happening with T2T. It was a tragedy that captured the attention of the country. A gunman walked into an office building in Manhattan last month and murdered New York City police officer Didarul Islam. Officer Islam left behind a pregnant wife and 2 children. Days after the shooting, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation pledged financial assistance to this family. Whenever a first responder dies in a line of duty and leaves behind young children, Tunnel to Towers is there to support them, and you can join the foundation on its mission to do good by donating $11 a month at t2t.org. And this month, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation has expanded its homeless veteran program. At the Veterans Village in Houston, more than a dozen individual comfort homes have opened. And outside Atlanta, the grand opening was held for a new Veterans Village, which will provide stable housing for nearly 100 vets. In addition, both facilities offer a range of supportive services for those who have struggled since leaving the military. And you can find more information on the Tunnel to Towers Homeless Veteran Program at t2t.org. And finally, if you're interested in taking part in one of the most unforgettable 5Ks in the country, you want to sign up now for the Tunnel to Towers Run Walk in New York City on Sunday, September 28th. Terry Collins will be there. Registration is limited. The event includes a post-race barbecue and a concert with country music superstar Chris Janson. And you can get more information about the run and the concert at t2t.org. That's T, the number 2t.org. And now it's time for Talkin' with TC and special guest, the one and only Bobby Valentine. On this special edition of Talkin' with TC, we bring on one of only 5 Mets managers to lead their club to a World Series appearance. Those before him, Gil Hodges, Yogi Berra, and Davey Johnson. The last to do it, Terry Collins in 2015. Our guest managed the Mets in their one and only Subway World Series in 2000. He managed the New York Mets in 1,003 games from 1996 to 2002, leading the team for the first time in their history to back-to-back postseason appearances. And only he and Terry Collins have accomplished that in the history of the franchise. He played for the Mets in 1977 and 78, served as their coach from 1983 to 85, managed their AAA team in Norfolk in 1994. He also managed the Texas Rangers and Boston Red Sox in the MLB and had 2 stints as a manager in the Japanese Pacific League. He's been an analyst for ESPN, a restaurant owner, and ran for mayor in 2021 in Stamford, Connecticut. It's an honor to welcome Bobby Valentine to the Terry Collins Show. Welcome, Bobby.
Great to be here. Thank you, Skipper, for having me on here. And let's go. Let's get this time done. That was too long of an introduction. And you forgot that I did 8 years of my life. Yeah.
You know, Bobby, when you have the career you've had, it takes a little time to get it all described. You know what I mean?
Well,
yeah.
there will be people out there who will write into you guys and say, why didn't you mention that 8 years of his life he spent as an athletic director at Sacred Heart University? Wanted to throw that in there because it was,
Yeah. Well, you know, and I'm the only guy, Bob, who can have you on who actually, you know, not only did I have, you know, was around you when you were in the big leagues in the United States, but I was also in Japan with you. So, you know, I saw both sides of it, and no matter wherever I saw you, you keep winning. So, you got some pretty good prerequisites. So I wanted to start out. Are you ready for the Alumni Classic? You got your lineups and your rotation set?
You know, I saw Betty Agbayani the other day, Terry, and he's tipping those scales at a pretty good clip right now. He says, "Hey, Skip, I'm not going to have to hit, am I?" And I said, "You bet you're going to have to hit. You guys are all younger than my guys, Terry. I don't know how they figured out this classic thing. My guys are going to get hurt. Your guys are going to run around the bases, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a great day."
It's going to be a great day. You know, I asked Jay about it because, you know, Jay Horowitz is getting a lot of flack from a lot of guys that were pre-2000. And he said, no, this is all about from 2000 forward. You know, Bobby had the guys that were, you know, finished up at Shea, and you got the guys at Citi Field. So, and I told him, I said, well, I'm going to do him a favor. I'm going to do Bobby's team a favor, and I'm going to start R.A. Dickey in the game because give him a little something to, you know, not real hard. And then, you know, I might have to go to Harv next. So it'll speed up a little bit after that. So
Yeah.
but, it's going to be a great time.
It'll be fun. I'm going to let the guys make out the lineup, though, Terry. I'm through making out lineups. That's for sure. Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure that's, you know, the end is coming. I had something for you at the end, but we can talk about it. You know, Bobby, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions going on, but, you know, you managed a lot of games, and you were a passionate guy, as I was managing these games. Do you think you could do it today?
Well, I don't know. It seems like it's a fun, easy job today because you're just dealing with the players feeling good about themselves. You know, it's no longer worried about the yelling at the umpire. It's no longer, you know, worrying about what's happening and being said, you know, around the game. It's just, you know, go out there, guys, have fun, be healthy, and you're never pushing anyone. You know what I mean? I mean, you're never saying, "Hey, I need you to be out there today, day game after night game," any of that stuff. So it's a little different, and I'm not going to do it again. That's for sure. And whether I could, the only thing I couldn't do, T, is keep myself from going to the bathroom the 7th inning. I don't know how these guys do it at 10 o'clock at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know, Bobby, you're still kind of, you do still a lot with the Angels in California. I know you're a consultant for the GM and stuff. Is it fun for you? Do you think is there an impact that you think you can make
No.
with the way the game is played today?
No, I don't think there's much of an impact. When you're up in the booth, line drive goes in the right center, and someone's looking at the screen and saying, "Well, he's a step and a half late on his jump, and it's an 82% catch percentage." And I don't know that I could be an impact dealing against the guys who are looking at the screens because they're usually a lot more right than I am.
Yeah, well, of course, everything's speeded up with all the camera angles and everything else now. They've got, you can look at a fly ball, and they've got it from every angle that there possibly can be. But I've looked at game, and a couple of years ago I went through some of the minor leagues, and I was the minor league director of the Dodgers for a while, and I went through when Kim Mang asked me with the Marlins asked me to just go through their minor leagues and watch a little bit. Bobby, I didn't even recognize the game, at that level anymore. It's all about, launch angles and swing, exit velocities, and, and to teach the fundamental parts of the game. I didn't see it.
Yeah, the one real fundamental. I don't think it's taught, and I don't know how much it deals with the everyday play, but that's that one-on-one competition between the hitter and the pitcher that you were so passionate about, and I was so passionate about. That's the essence of the game, and you wanted the guy who had the ball to want to beat that guy who had the bat, and the guy who had the bat, you wanted him to want to win that competition as much as you wanted him to win that competition. Today, it's oh well, he didn't throw it in my zone. It's okay for me to take strike three and walk back to the dugout. That desire to win that one-on-one competition, I think, has been skewed by get a good swing, make a great pitch, make sure it's spinning properly, make sure you have the proper velocity, make sure it's in your spot. Sometimes you got to hit a pitch that's not in your spot and drive in a run with two strikes, and that's not part of the game today.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we all see it. It's all about, trying to hit the ball over the fence. And I always get excited when I see somebody get a 2-out single to the opposite field with a runner at second base, and that run scores. And, those things add up at the end of the game. I mean, they win you a lot of games. It used to be. And now it's just, you look late in the game, and it's not. I mean, I watched the game yesterday with the Mets, and, Soto came up in the ninth inning and got 2 strikes on him and just hit a little single to left field, kept the inning going. And I thought, that's how I learned how to play the game.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. And the jury's not back yet. Whether or not your most productive group of people are those who are trying to hit the ball as far as they can, as often as they can, or those guys who are trying to play the ball game. I think eventually it'll be a group of guys with a mix of guys who are hitters and guys who are swingers. And the guys who are swingers during our era. I mean, there's a great Met who is one of the great swingers of all time, Dave Kingman. And, he wasn't appreciated at all during that time, where today he would be so appreciated for being that kind of guy. Take a walk, hit it out of the ballpark, and swing and miss, and go back to the bench once in a while. That's today's swinger, and I prefer the hitter personally.
Yeah, me too, Bob. In the other phase of the game, which I'm asked about all the time now, is the starting pitching. And I know the minor league director very well for the Angels, and I know what he's trying to preach over there in the minor leagues, which is a little different than a lot of teams are looking at it in the big leagues. But I thought when I went to Japan, and of course you were there a lot longer than I was, but they got themselves ready to make the game itself, those pitchers, easier. They threw and threw and threw. So that 100 pitches in a game, but they didn't even break sweats hardly.
My birthday is May 13th, Terry, and I had a pitcher who during spring training, in my honor, wanted to throw a bullpen session with 513 pitches. He did it. I walked away. I couldn't watch it anymore. He was actually pulling this thing off. He was a submariner, so it was a little different. But you're right. Throwing more was their thing. Now, the great high school coach there, the guy who had you say Kikuchi and Otani and all over in Iwate. He's actually limiting the pitches that guys are throwing now in their bullpen sessions, which is revolutionary.
Yeah, and of course I don't know how many that is because I saw a guy when I took over the team in Japan. I saw a kid throw 185 pitches in the bullpen, and he told me that that's what it really takes him before he really has a good feel for pitching. And I told him, if you think I'm going to watch you throw 185 pitches before you're ready, you're mistaken. You're going to have to be able to cut that back a little bit. So, but it was all about trying to make the game easier for those guys. So we all knew they were only going to throw 115 to 125 maybe in a game, but their arms were in such great shape and they had such great endurance that was they were fine at that number of pitches, I thought.
Then they weeded out the weak, So what are you going to do? They did it early. If you got hurt, you couldn't survive. You weren't a pitcher, and not that many of them made it to the top, but the ones who did usually stayed healthy. And then they
Yeah,
get
I
here and they
agree.
get hurt. Go figure that one
Yeah.
out. Then the Japanese pitcher gets here, and after never having an injury, I did 6 years in Japan contiguous, and no one ever got injured. I didn't have a pitcher get a Tommy John operation or walk off the mound in 6 years. And then some of those guys came here, and 2 months later they were getting an operation. So you go figure.
Yeah, when I came back from Japan, Bobby, the Mets hired me to be the field coordinator in the minor leagues, and they had just signed two Japanese pitchers with the Mets. And I went to Jerry Manuel and said, listen, I'm just going to tell you, let them be themselves, because if they don't get the work that they think they need to be ready,
You're
that
right.
sometimes has some problems.
You're right. You're right. And how
Yeah,
are the Mets going to turn it around this year? They need one of those streaks. You've had streaks in your career, that made or break or broke the season. I did too. They need a streak to make this season. You think they could put it together?
I do. They had a good team, Bobby. They have a good team. I mean, everybody has injuries, and I certainly get that. But the key to this team, as you know, is those first four guys in that lineup. I mean, they are really productive guys. And now Jeff McNeil's starting to swing better, so he's a big help. But they've relied on those young guys a lot in this part early in the season. And I think as you get deep into the season, those stars got to come. They got to start getting it going. And I really think these games against the Phillies is going to set a tone. I really do, and I'm glad they're playing them at home. But you come out of this with a series victory, and you raise your spirits, as and the confidence of the club, and they'll be down to 29 games left, and I think they've got a streak in them. I think they're good enough. I think their lineup's good enough, and
Pitching, that starting pitching has to hold up. And I like the team. I love the manager, and I think that they're going to be in it to win it. Phillies had their streak. I think they're playing okay now, but this is the time you got to get hot. You get hot now, you get it through the playoffs, and could be a lot of smiling faces in Flushing when we come to play that alumni game.
yeah, and they did it. The one thing they got going for them, Bobby, is they did it last year. I mean, after a horrible, horrible start, they put it together, and they had a tremendous second half, so they know it can be done. And and of course, go back a few years ago, the Nationals got off to a terrible start. They won the World Series. Next thing you know, the Phillies got off to a bad start. They fired the manager, and they get to the World Series. So I mean, it can be done. It's just it's like you said in the one thing, you got to keep your players' heads up, boy, because if they get down now, this is not the time. I always thought, Bobby, at this time of year, that August, September, that's when the good teams really stepped up to me.
Yeah, they took the entire season to get it together, and by now they were together and they gave it darn. I think that team has it in them, and I'm hoping and looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, Bobby, the one question that you and I did a function last winter at Citi Field, and you brought up some pretty good points about the new umpiring system, balls and strikes, guys. And so I think next year, have you seen this challenge system yet work?
Yeah,
Or have you seen it?
yeah, I've seen it in the minor
You
leagues.
like
Yeah.
it? You like it?
Well, I like it better than what it is now. It's another point of entertainment, I guess. It can involve the fans a little more. But I'm just one of those guys, T, that I think every call should be made properly. I don't believe that the human element should be displayed on the field except for the guys who are playing the game. And if we had the technology to get the balls and strikes correct, I think it should be done every time. One pitch can mean an at bat, one at bat can mean a game, one game can mean a pennant, and change the whole trajectory of players and teams and organizations. It's just too important not to be done correctly, and why we're not using that idea to make it right baffles me. And one of the reasons, and this is my pet peeve, and you're a feisty shortstop, and you played in the day when the guy was coming down trying to break your leg, and I did the same thing. And the greatest play, I thought, the most athletic play, was what happened around the bag at second base on a double play. You had to catch it, you had to throw it, you had to get out of the way who's the guy who's coming in at you. Well, that's no longer part of the game, and you can't cheat out there by coming off the base early and making that double play. And at first base, you used to have the Keith Hernandez and the clean, smooth guys who would come off the base and catch that throw and be that far off the base. When they caught it, the umpire would call them out because of the bang bang. Well, those two plays basically were cheating because they weren't on the bag when they had the ball, and baseball doesn't allow them to cheat anymore. But today, the catcher who cheats when he catches a ball that's off the plate and then tries to move it onto the plate, he gets paid more for doing that. We have a young catcher here in L.A., Logan O'Hoppe, who's struggling mentally because he doesn't think he cheats properly. He's not as good at moving balls that are off the plate on the plate, and because of that, he's a lesser catcher than another guy. I think that's total BS. You shouldn't be awarded for cheating, and a strike should be a strike, and a ball should be a ball, and maybe the challenge system will get it right. But I know there'll still be pitches that fall through the cracks, and there'll be games where guys say, "Oh, I wish I challenged that. It would have been a different outcome."
Yeah, Bobby, I see. I don't know when, but I can see in my opinion, within the next 3 years, you're going to have the automatic strike zone.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but
It should have been 3 years
really believe
ago.
that.
Yeah, of course.
I saw it. I saw it in Arizona Fall League when they first tried it, and obviously there's got to be some adjustments to it because I saw balls that were coming down or breaking balls that came down in the front part of home plate and actually almost bounced on the plate, but hit that bottom of that zone and got clicked as a strike, and the hitter couldn't hit it. I mean, there was no way possible he could possibly hit the ball.
Well, I think
So there's got to be some adjustments made, but I can see that coming real soon.
yeah, and the machine will get it right. They'll get it right more than the person. There's no doubt about that. And with the lack of hitting that's out there, Terry, the easy thing for MLB to do is to make the ball beyond the plate. Make 51% of the ball be over the plate when it comes across the plate. That's going to make hitting a little easier. It's going to make pitching a little tougher. It'll add to home runs, doubles, and hits, and they can do that, and they should do that. But that this idea of stealing things and cheating really shouldn't be part of our game.
I remember a few years ago, Bobby, and I'm going to say it's Joe. It was Joe West. Was been my guess because he would be the most vocal guy at the time. But I remember my catcher that we had at the time, and my catching coach was raving about how good he could frame a pitch and how he could get it back in the zone. And he's raked up so high. And this game starts, and I don't know, third, fourth inning, Joe calls me out. I go outside the dugout. He said, "Look, I've already talked to your catcher once. I'm not talking to him again. He just tell him just to catch the ball. I'll call the balls and strikes." He said, if he keeps bringing that ball back on home plate, I'm not giving him nothing. And that's where I go back and, like you have said, hey, look, that's the stuff you got to be careful of. And so you're right. Now let's just get some system in there that's going to be, it's going to make it correct. And now just go catch it, because I see a lot of balls going off catcher's gloves now because they're trying to get it back on before it's in the zone. And I think it's going to be an interesting couple of years.
I was with Mike Socia the other day, T, and I know you know him really well. from your playing and managing days. And Mike was a great catcher, and he was a real cerebral guy. He understood all this stuff, and he just doesn't get why we don't do it right. And he thinks that the lack of blocking and lack of throwing by the catcher, which used to be the skill that they got paid for and rated for, is down because guys are just trying to catch the ball and make it a strike. They think that's
Yeah.
their number one job back there, and I don't believe that. I think it should be erased from
Bobby,
the protocol. Yeah,
right, in this new catcher stance, where they get down on one knee so
yeah.
they can get lower, Well, hell, nowadays guys want to pitch up. Why? So why are you just getting them squatting down there so low? Because they're having a tough time blocking balls because they can't move. They kind of get paralyzed a little bit. And I'm thinking, well, today's game about the power pitch, and everybody wants to pitch up here because that ball down the zone is the ball the guys kill nowadays with the bat angle. So I have, I'm baffled by watching some of these games. I can tell you.
Yeah, that one knee thing, you know where that came from. That came from Japan. That's the way the guys all did it in Japan, to get that low target and block the ball on one knee. But they were able to come up and throw from that position because they practiced it all their life. And now, T, the idea that spin, chase, all of that thing. You'll remember how frustrated you got in Japan when guys wouldn't throw their fastball when they were behind in the count, and you remember when you played and when you managed early on and all through your career as well as mine, when a pitcher was out there and the count was 2-0 or 3-1 and he threw something other than the fastball, there were some very unflattering comments coming from the dugout talking about that guy's manlyhood and whether or not he had the guts to pitch. But today, you have to throw your breaking ball when you're behind in the count. A 2-1
That's
count
true.
today is a definite breaking ball count. A 3-2 count is a definite breaking ball count where they want to chase. They want the hitter to swing and miss, and you get points for chasing, not for competing and challenging. And I guess that's a smart thing, except for my money, a lot of guys can't hit the fastball. And you should throw more fastballs, but today it's the Japanese way that they're all pitching. That when you're behind in
Yeah.
the count, you throw your breaking ball, you're ahead in the count, you throw a fastball. If you throw the fastball, throw it up in the zone where they can't get to it. Wow, that makes hitting pretty difficult.
Yeah. So we got so with this classic, we got a bet on this. I read wherever you said we got a bet on this for going to dinner. Is that the losers got to buy dinner?
Absolutely. Because just as you did yesterday when you're out in the golf course, your guys are younger. I'll take a couple runs and I'll bet dinner for four at your favorite restaurant. I just need some runs, dude. I need
Oh,
some
you mean
runs.
there's a handicap on this too
Oh,
on the
there
game?
sure and hell better be. The
Well,
50-year-olds playing against the 40-year-olds. There better be
yeah. Well,
handicap.
we'll have to have that discussion on the 12th before that game starts. I can tell you that that'll be a fun one.
You
Well,
got it,
Bobby, I
T.
know John's got some questions for you.
Come on.
John's a long time Mets fan, and so I know he's got some questions
Come
for you.
on,
So,
John.
John,
Bring 'em
come on
on.
in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's so great to just hear you guys talk. And yeah, for me, 60 years as a Mets fan. And I've been every World Series game at Shea, Citi Field. And so this is an honor for me to talk to you, Bobby. And I've always been a huge fan of yours, even during your playing days. You and TC had so much fire in the dugout. I mean, you're beloved by the fans. And you're both remembered so fondly by the fan base of this organization. But there are probably two things that both you and TC probably hear about. For Terry, it was May of 2016 when he was ejected by Tom Hallion. And the Ass in the Jackpot video has become one of the most viral ejections in the history of Major League Baseball. And you're pretty well up there as well because June 9th, 1999, you were ejected by home plate umpire Randy Marsh for arguing a catcher's interference call against Mike Piazza. And we do have a video of that ejection and something that happened an inning later against the Toronto Blue Jays. So let's go to that video, and then we'll talk about it briefly on the other side.
Here we go.
Could keep Mahomes, go to 12 pitches, drop a position player, or maybe Mahomes would be the pitcher to go down. Runner going, they pitch out. Piazza's throw, not handled. And it's a stolen base, number 21 for Shannon Stewart.
Wait a minute now. Uh-oh. What happened here? Did he make contact with the glove? Oh, a catcher's, no, not a catcher's block.
Grebeck awarded first base.
Interference?
I think Bobby Valentine might be arguing that in an attempt to protect the base runner, Stewart stepped across home plate.
Let's see if he crossed home plate. You can make contact. Let's take a look again. Piazza goes out for the pitch out.
I don't even see Grebeck in the equation.
I don't know what they called right there. I have no idea what they called. Piazza way out in front. Maybe they're saying he's too far out in front, and Grebeck didn't have an opportunity to even throw the bat at the ball. Now, I'll tell you what, if Grebeck throws the bat at the ball, he hits Piazza. And a lot of times on a pitch out, a hitter will throw the bat at the ball.
I think from that angle, that was the call, that Piazza got out too quickly.
Couldn't do it.
And now Ricky leads off the bottom of the 13th against Graham Lloyd and takes a strike. So it'll be Henderson, Alfonso. And remember now, the pitcher is in the third slot with John Olerud having been replaced as part of a double switch.
Bobby Valentine, the dugout.
Wait. Give me that again. Well, Bobby was thrown out on that catcher's interference call, and he's gone incognito. Sorry, Skip, we got you.
Yeah, cast the characters there, John. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Hey, so, you know, everyone knows that backstory, but let's just add this in. That was Fran Healy, a major league catcher for many years, not knowing what was going on with the catcher's balk, which was 1, and the catcher's interference, which was 2. He called both plays on that, awarded the hitter first base and the runner second base. And, you know, my whole thing out there, the backstory is my 3 of my coaches were fired a few days prior to that. And so I was trying to be on best behavior because most of the, some of the press in New York wanted me to be fired with them, or at least wanted me to leave with them and show loyalty. And so there couldn't be an explosion there. So when I came out and I said, "What's going on?" and he told me what was going on, I just said, "Holy, you got to be shitting me." And he said, "No, I'm not." And then I gave him the old, "Well, you know what I'm thinking?" He said, "I don't care." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm thinking." And then he threw me out of the game. And when I went up into the clubhouse, you saw the guy sitting on the top step there. That's Oral Hershiser, okay, who was going to be my runner from the clubhouse. But instead he said, "No, come on down," because I had 3 new coaches, including, your good friend, my good friend, Dave Wallace, who just kind of got in uniform, and now he was managing the team. And, Oral said, "Hey, go on down there. We need help in extra innings. We can't let this one slip away." And the guy who walked in front of me was the pitcher on the mound. That's Patrick Mahomes' father, Patrick Mahomes, all right, who threw the pitch out at the time. And the little guy who walked in front is the infamous Timo Perez, who lives in infamy with New York Met fans. So, yeah, I got thrown out. And the crazy thing, it was a 3-day suspension and a $10,000 fine. But Leonard Coleman at the time was playing golf with my first baseman from high school, one of my childhood best friends down in Florida. And he was the president of the league. And we got it reduced to 2-game suspension and $5,000. So, yeah, that's the rest of that story. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that backstory. That was such a cool moment when you look back at it all these years later with the mustache and the glasses. And, people will never forget that. On a little bit of a somber note, next year is going to mark the 25th anniversary of the September 11th World Trade Center attack. The New York Mets organization stepped up in such a huge way to help in any way they could. And along with Sue Lucci over at Shea Stadium and the front office, turned Shea Stadium's parking lots into a staging area for supplies and first responders. You were front and center in helping organize your team to help. You won the 2002 Branch Rickey Award for your donations and personal work with the survivors of those attacks. Give us your perspective on that horrific week and everything that led to Shea Stadium being such an important part of the staging area and the assistance to the first responders. Bob.
Yeah, it was Kevin McCarthy and Sue Lucci, who were the stadium operations people, who took over while the team, we were in Pittsburgh at the time playing the New York Mets, and we had a drive back the next morning. We left about 4 a.m. to drive back to Shea Stadium. When we got there, there was some moving around because the initial staging area, and people have to understand that these thousands of heroic men and women who were digging through the rubble, the hot steel, and the smoldering heap of building, trying to get survivors. Well, they were filthy within 20 minutes. You know, their eyes were burning. Everything was needed there, from water to eye wash to new clothing and so the staging area initially was going to be one of the piers down on the west side, but the city decided they were unstable because of the earthquake, basically, that occurred after the buildings collapsed. So their plan B was to have Shea Stadium as the staging area for these thousands of boxes of things that were brought from the community, brought from all over. A bus from North Carolina came up filled with T-shirts and jeans and eye wash. Anyway, we set up basically a Home Depot there in Shea Stadium. That's why we were so involved, because it was our home that was being a staging area for those who were going to be rescued. As it turned out, it went from a rescue mission to something other than that by the time we were playing 10 days later.
Yeah. Well, those images are still so vivid in everybody's minds. September 21st, baseball returned to New York and provided the first opportunity for the city, the country, to smile a little bit. It was an incredible, emotional night, capped off by what Mike Piazza did in the 8th inning against the Atlanta Braves. So we're going to go to that video right now about that evening and then get your thoughts on the other side.
10 days ago, people around the globe were shocked and saddened by the tragic events that unfolded here in New York City, in Washington, D.C., and outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Nobody knew what the right time was or if it was the right time to come back.
People wanted to find refuge in baseball, in a crowd, and being around other people. It has a tendency to kind of ease the pain a little bit when you have that support group.
Tonight we come together for the first regular season professional sporting event in New York City since Tuesday, September 11th.
It was an important sign of normalcy returning to America.
You know, my thoughts at that time, that I think about it, were that if anybody was going to see me, they were going to see me being joyful and being proud.
It was different. They weren't such an enemy after all for maybe 10 minutes. Once the game started, it was again.
Piazza's going to be the batter.
And here's the man the Mets want up in this spot, down a run late in the game.
It was almost like a blur to me. It was almost like a dream, sort of surreal.
Fastball, 0-1.
We as athletes, in a sense, have some sort of ability to focus. We try to revert back to that, and I tried to sort of find that and say, man, you know, I feel like I'm gotta cry, but I gotta do my job. So I was torn.
Arce has seen Piazza 4 times previously. Mike 1 for 4 against him.
Just had to basically dig down deep and do whatever we could to get out there and do our jobs.
Lopez wants it away. And it's hit deep to left center. Andrew Jones on the run. This one has a chance. Home run! Mike Piazza
People obviously found it a way to find some sort of joy or happiness or inspiration, but for me, again, I try to keep it in perspective.
This place exploded. It's been waiting to explode all night. Wow, Mike Piazza. This crowd was ready. They wanted to shout and scream all night. And boy, did they get an opportunity from Mike Piazza.
Well, it was a great ending, storybook ending. The home team coming back, playing in front of an emotional crowd.
Shea Stadium has something to smile about.
Still incredible after all these years.
Yeah, it is. It is incredible, and whew, you could see the look in the guy's eyes trying to figure out how to describe what went on, and it's indescribable because probably 48 hours before that game, we thought we were going to Atlanta to play that game. We went down to Pittsburgh to reopen the season, and when we went to Pittsburgh, we didn't know if we were ever going to play a game in New York again. Remember that one of the planes left from, a couple miles away, LaGuardia. We were thinking, and guys said to me, hey, we're the biggest target in the world. We're going to, put on a happy face in New York City. What if? And when we got to the ballpark, you got to understand, that's the day the world changed. There were metal detectors. There were sniffing dogs. There were men with long guns up in the light towers. And that was the stage that we were being asked to perform on. So it was really weird. And we didn't know if anybody would come to the game. How many people are actually going to leave their house? Because for a week, I know my family didn't leave their house. I know that my neighbors weren't in their cars going shopping. They felt they had enough and they were going to stay in the security of their home with their families. And all of a sudden, we're asking these guys from Atlanta, who Bobby Cox at the time scratching his head, why are we coming to New York? He said to me. I said, because it's the right thing to do. That the commander in chief, when they talk about leadership, even though he didn't come out and say baseball needs to resume in New York, it was brought to my attention that that was George's desires. And I had worked with him in Texas, and I was feeling for him. I wanted to enlist and be part of his team to help get the bad guys. And instead of getting the bad guys, we were becoming the good guys and putting on the happy faces. And it's pretty amazing the way that all came to pass. It could have had an ugly ending, obviously, and it could have the good guys could have lost that game and put people into more of a bad mood. But as you heard Gary and Fran saying, everyone was there kind of waiting, wondering what's going to happen. And many of them had bad thoughts were going to happen, but they were there showing their ability to stand up against the bad guys. A lot of brave people were in that ballpark that day, including the ones in uniform.
When Piazza hit that home run, the elation, and everyone was just kind of this exhale of finally, let's cheer, let's smile, even though there was horrific things still going on down at Ground Zero. As you might know, Bobby, our show is presented by Tunnel to Towers Foundation, and Terry has become an ambassador for T to T, appearing for them at groundbreaking ceremonies for military veteran homes and veteran villages. He is also running in their 5K for the second year in a row, September 28th in New York City. And we are closely associated with the organization. And one of their big initiatives for next year is Never Forget. I mean, today, 25 years, 24 years later, next year, 25 years later, it's like you have to keep these memories alive so people will know the impact and what happened, the younger generation. So for both of you, and this is for UNTC, how important is it for all generations to never forget what happened that day and that year?
Well,
Go ahead, T.
yeah, well, first of all, his explanation, John, was off the charts. Bobby's, it couldn't have been a bigger celebration, but, I'm a big believer in in history and knowing what happened. And I don't think we should ever forget. And we both had the chance to be in Japan. And when I went to Hiroshima and went to the museum where the atom bomb kit, I said, this should never, ever, ever happen again. And I feel the same way about 9/11. And I know our armed forces are doing the best job they possibly can to keep this ever from happening again. So, but I think people have to understand what the history was and what it was like for Bobby and those guys to go through that. What he just described. I mean, these guys went out there with, and they're big, strong guys. Make no mistake about it. But there was a little fear, like, what is going to happen? Is this what these terrorists are waiting for? Is this big group of people where they could do more damage? And to have and Bobby's leadership said, no, we got to do this. And I just think the baseball players of today and the fans of today need to remember it. And I think next year in 25 years, it's going to be some kind of great celebration.
Yeah, it'll be a celebration of kind of a victory, but there's also those wounds that are left unhealed. Many people lost their loved ones, and obviously, I became real connected with a lot of people who were in uniform that day, whose parent or father or brother or mother or sister went to work that day and never came back. And that's what you need to remember, that we lost over 3,000 people on that day, and we were attacked by an enemy. And that's what we can't forget, that we need to keep our forces strong. We need to keep our defenses up. And we need to remember and have some kind of empathy and a lot of sympathy for those who lost their loved ones on that day.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you for that. I have a couple of quick questions from fans, and then we'll let you go, Bobby, and we thank you again for your time today. Our first fan question comes from our Instagram account, and this comes from Dan McCabe. Bobby, what was your favorite memory as Mets manager? And part B to that, and who was the most underrated play you think that you've managed that didn't really get the accolades they deserve?
That moment was a different moment. So we'll say that Mike hitting that home run, obviously the most memorable. Probably Benny Agbayani. Benny had like an 840 OPS. Benny was a guy pulled out of nowhere and said he can really play, but he didn't look like he could really play because his uniform was baggy. He was a Hawaiian / Samoan type of body, but he could steal a base. He could walk. He could hit a home run. He could hit a double. He could hit a breaking ball, and he was thought of as the guy who gave the kid the ball on the bases loaded fly ball, foul ball out. But no, he was the guy who got the double and the RBI in the one World Series win that we got. He was the guy who got the home run to put us in the World Series. And he was as good a player, as most underrated player I definitely ever had.
Yeah, definitely. He's so cool, and you'll see him, I guess, September the 13th.
And
right?
his son just got drafted by the Minnesota Twins, and both of his daughters are as good a softball players as the country's ever had.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's very cool. I'm sure that's going to be a big, big day on September 13th. And the last question comes from our Gmail account, and this is from Joe Hunt from Long Island. And this is actually for both of you. Commissioner Rob Manfred made some recent comments about the future realignment and expansion of Major League Baseball. There's a lot of speculation of forming divisions and perhaps breaking up the National League and American League. What are both of your thoughts on realignment in baseball and the thought of even potentially dissolving the leagues and turning them into divisions?
Go, T.
Well, I am a true old timer and believe that I grew up with the two leagues, and when they changed it and brought in other teams and they changed the divisions around, I still believe in the American pastime, but I don't think it'll ever change. Whether for me, you got to adapt. It's always been about that. And if they change it, and I've said for a long time that travel's tough, man, and travel beats you up, and especially in today's game with the way the players are being treated, as far as rest times and all the other things involved. So going to these divisions will certainly cut back the travel time needed for these guys to stay rested. But there's going to be a part of me that's going to miss having an American and National League, because that's how I learned the game.
Yeah, that's how the game always was in my mind. But with interleague play the way it is now, and no divisional play, it's one league anyway. I mean, there should be only one MVP in my mind. There should be one Cy Young, because everyone's playing the same teams all year long. So the only thing this will do is lessen the expenses, and the expenses are exorbitant. Flying around and doing things the way they're doing now costs a lot of money, and the end game is to make more money for the guys who own these teams, and they invest a lot of money. So I think it's going to happen, and basically, it does happen, and I don't know how they'll figure out all the divisional play, but it'll be a different tournament. What we've done in baseball is we've changed the vernacular so people talk about it differently. We changed the way we see it. We changed the way it's played, really, as we mentioned earlier. So I don't think there's any reason to really hold on to the American League, National League concept, because I think it's already watered down enough.
I appreciate that from both of you. And Bobby, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you on the 13th.
Terry, make sure you get that bet. I want a bet on this game. No doubt about it. I want a bet.
You got it,
and
Bob.
thanks for having me on.
I'm looking forward to it, Bobby. Thank you so much for being on it. Think the world of you and respect the hell out of you. So thanks for coming on. I'll see you soon.
You're the best. Thanks, Dave. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. Terry, that was really one of the best for me, seeing both you and Bobby together. It was such a great talking with TC with Bobby Valentine.
Yeah, I've been around Bobby a lot. We became very good friends recently. And, when I went to Japan, he really helped me immensely. But, he's a sharp baseball guy, and he loves the game. Great personality, as you can tell. And so it was good to have him on. I'm looking forward to seeing him again in September. But I enjoy being around him, and I think he was a good person to have on our show, John.
Yes, totally. And that day, September 13th, is going to be very special. And of course, there'll be competition a little bit, but it'll be mostly for fun and to see players that you haven't seen in a long time, and him the same thing. So what a reunion that our good friend Jay Horwitz has helped put together with the Mets organization. And it's going to be great for all the fans, because those two seasons and those two eras were just so special for the New York Mets. Now it's time for a special story on behalf of Tunnel of Towers with the newest Mets Hall of Famer, David Wright. Let's take a look at that with the captain right now.
I'm David Wright, former New York Mets third baseman, and I support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. My father was in the Army Reserves and then went on to work his way up the Norfolk Police Department to assistant chief. At the time, growing up, didn't quite know the challenges or the risks or the dangers of the job, but now that I have kids of my own, I certainly appreciate his service, the dedication to the craft, and obviously serving the community. Because I grew up in a household with a police officer as a father, I see firsthand the impact that these men and women make on their communities. Each year of my career, we would go visit different firehouses, and to hear the stories firsthand from coworkers, friends, brothers, sisters that had lost a family member in 9/11. It's a incredible feeling to hear the stories, although incredibly sad, but just the way their mind works and the mindset of a true hero running towards the problem and not away from it. We should do what we can to help the first responders, because it's very easy to overlook the work that they do on a daily basis until you actually really need them. And again, they'll be the first ones there to help. So it's nice to be able to reciprocate that and to help them as much as we can.
This newly renovated smart home marks a fresh start in the lives of those who deserve it the most.
I think it's incredibly important to support Tunnel to Towers. I've seen firsthand the great work they do helping our firefighters, our police, and our soldiers and their families. T2T is asking for your support for these brave men and women. Just $11 a month will go a long way and make a big difference. Let's go Mets, and let's help Tunnel to Towers. Go to t2t.org to find out more. Let's do good together.
Terry, before we go, we want to remind everybody out there, of course, to check out Amazing Conversations with Jay Horowitz, a New York Mets podcast, hosted by the foremost Mets historian. Each week, Jay brings on guests from all eras in Mets history, and the last show was with Wilma Flores, and that was amazing. So Amazing Conversations with Jay Horowitz, available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. And it's good to see the New York Mets putting a little bit of money behind the set with Jay and Wilmer, so it looks really sharp. But I had a question for you. You were recently up there for a very special occasion with Jay Horowitz, his 80th birthday. So why don't you give us a little insight on how that party was?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we had we had a lot of people, maybe 50, 60 people who were, around the stadium. Of course, John Franco was there, who was, loves Jay to death. Willie Randolph was there. I had a great time with Willie. Fred Wilpon was there when I got there. And, it again, just shows you how much Jay's loved by everybody who's ever been a part of the Mets. And had a great time, and 80th birthday. And I told him, I said, I plan on attending your 90th, and you'd probably still be doing what you're doing now. So it was a great time, and congratulations to Jay.
Absolutely. Happy at the 80th to Jay Horowitz, who's such a dear friend and helps us so much here at the Terry Collins Show as well. And Terry, we're going to wrap up this edition of the show, and it's always a pleasure to have you here with us. And we look forward to seeing you on September 13th. So
it'll be a lot of fun, John. I hope to see you there.
I'll see you in uniform then.
I hope. Yes, you will.
Yes, I'll be on the field. I'll be looking forward to that, and I can't wait for it. And Terry, once again, thank you so much.
You bet.
We invite you to subscribe to the Terry Collins Show on your favorite podcast platform or on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com, The Terry Collins Show. Our entire archives of the past 2 seasons are available on the podcast platform you listen to and on YouTube. And all of these episodes, as well as highlight clips, can be seen on that YouTube channel. So please stop by, subscribe to the Terry Collins Show on YouTube. We want to thank our creative director, Marsh, for all his hard work each and every week, and to our researcher, especially during those segments that we reminisce about 10 years ago, Mr. Dominic DiBiase. For Terry Collins, this is Jonah Rezi. We'll see you next time.